Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and while you're at it, click the bell to be notified of future videos. This block is called Slip Knot, and it finishes at 12 inches. Here is the diagram. The first version I saw of this slip knot was one done by Nancy Zeman. It didn't have a date on it, but it's the first time I'd seen it. And then later on I've seen other versions of it, more simplified versions. And for my version, I've added these half square triangles in the outer corners because here are 4 blocks set block to block, and by adding those extra half square triangles in the corner, you get this additional design here, and it's not so much with all the white space here. You get a little bit of something else to look at. So these are 4 blocks set block to block. Patch A is a 1.5 inch finished half square triangle. We cut 2 3/8 inch squares, cut them in half once on the diagonal to get 2 patches. We'll need 12 patches of the blue, 24 of the black, and 24 of the background. Here are the AccuQuilt dies that will cut this. All of these AccuQuilt dies can be found in the 6-inch cube. Patch B is a 1.5 inch by 3 inch finished rectangle. We cut 3.5 inch by 2 inch rectangles. We'll need 8 patches for the background and 4 patches for the blue. Patch C is a 1.5 inch finished square. We cut 2 inch squares, and we'll need 4 patches of the blue fabric. Patch D is a 3 inch finished quarter square triangle. We'll cut a square 4¼ inches, and we'll cut it in half twice diagonally, and we'll get 4 patches. And 4 patches are what we need of the black fabric. And finally, patch E is a 3 inch finished square on point. And we'll cut a 2 5/8 inch square. We just need 1 of the blue fabric. Don't think that this block is too complicated just by looking at it. As we do with all of the blocks here, we break them down into the smallest parts, meaning our patches when we cut patches, and we'll just start putting the patches together in sort of an orderly fashion. Here are the fabrics I've chosen. This is patch A, the half square triangles, and I've used my AccuQuilt to cut these, and they're all patches. Here's patch B, the rectangles. Patch C is the square. Patch D is the quarter square triangle, and patch E is the square on point. Now, a common question that I get is the square on point. If you look at patch E, which is the 3 inch finished square on point, people ask, well, how do you get a 3 inch block when you cut a 2 5/8 inch square? So here's patch E. It's a 2 5/8 inch square cut. So that is slightly larger than 2.5 inches. If we turn it on point, we can see that it's bigger. And if we take these half square triangles and piece them like this, you can see that makes the square bigger. So it takes the diagonal, and that's by putting it on point, it makes the square bigger when you add the half square triangles. Now we'll just look at page 2. And yes, there's a lot of steps on page 2, but they're very easy. The first step we do is make the half square triangles. We'll take the A patches and make 12 of these, 8 of these, and 4 of these. And to do that, you will just take 2 of your patches. They go together like this. Flip it over, match all 3 sides, sew 1/4 inch, and press your seams open. You won't be using all of your A patches for this, but all of the A patches that are needed to make these 24 half square triangles. After we make the half square triangles, we're going to make the flying geese unit, and there are 4 of these. We'll take patch D, and then you should have 8 background A patches left to make these flying geese units. Here is patch D, and then we'll take 2 of the patch A's and stitch them like this. When I stitch my flying geese units, I usually take one side first, flip this over, and you'll need to match this bottom edge and this side edge here. stitch 1/4 inch and press your seams open. And then once that's done, you'll just do the same thing to the other side and match the bottom here and the side angle, stitch 1/4 inch and press them open. And you'll make 4 of these flying geese units. The next unit we'll make is the center unit, which is the square on point. We'll take the E patch and the 4 dark A patches that are left. And here's how you'll stitch these. For the square on point, I like to stitch opposite sides first and then press the seams and stitch the other sides last and press the seams. If you're not familiar with doing this, there's a short tutorial coming up that shows you how to do it with rotary cutting and with AccuQuilt cut pieces. Piecing the square on point unit using rotary cutting patches. You have your 4 half square triangles that go on the corners and your large square in the center that's set on point. I like to start by piecing opposite sides first. And what I do is flip this over, center the square on the triangle, matching these edges, the long edge of the triangle and one side of the square. You want to see if these triangles over here on the right and here on the left are roughly the same size. You just kind of eyeball it. So there, I'm going to go with that. Stitch 1/4 inch from this edge, a 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way down. Do this side as well. Press your seams open, and if you look, these edges extend here, and what I'm going to do now is just trim these off straight in line with the side of the square. Put your half square triangle down with the right side facing up, and then place this in the center, and then check the size of your triangles overhanging here. And what you're going to do here, you will start stitching right here in this V section where this point meets. And this should be a 1/4 inch from here to the edge of this fabric. Start here, stitch a 1/4 inch all the way to this side, and you should come out here at the same part on this side. And do that on both sides. And here's what the stitching looks like. And now you're going to press your seams open. And here's the finished unit. Now just trim off these little nubs on the sides. And your unit's finished. Piecing the square on point using AccuQuilt. I like to start by piecing opposite sides first. And you're going to place the half square triangle piece on top. We need to center it. I just kind of eyeball it, and I'm looking at this little triangle of the bottom fabric poking out here. You can barely see it. It's a little triangle poking out here, and then on the other side there's a little triangle poking out here. What you want to do is try to get them as close to the same size as possible. So I'm just kind of shifting it a little bit. And you're going to take it to your machine, and your 1/4 inch should be right here at this point. So you stitch from this point a 1/4 inch all the way down, and you come off at this point. And it's more important that you have the 1/4 inch than if you're exactly on the point. And you'll do that for both sides, this side and then this opposite side. Press your seams open. Now we'll flip it over and do the other 2 sides. You take your triangle, and now you have sides that you can match. You see the triangle has the points cut off. These points are going to line up with what we just sewed. So if you look here, you see they line up with this edge, these 2 edges, here, here, and across the top. Now you'll stitch a 1/4 inch from that point here all the way down to this other point, and do that to both sides. It's really difficult to see this stitching because I used white thread, but you can see it coming out here, this little tag here and over here. If these don't match perfectly, if it's like it's not long enough, don't stretch this triangle because you'll just make the unit wonky. Just center it as much as you can and stitch 1/4 inch. Now we'll just press it open and it will be finished. And there's your finished unit. At some point when you finish your square on point unit, you'll have to sew something else to it. And you want to keep these points nice and sharp. And sometimes you might be matching it to a seam line or a plain piece of fabric or maybe another point. And I'm going to show you how to keep these points nice. If you've pressed your seam open, you will see where these 3 fabrics intersect and form a point right here. That's your point on the back, and it's also your point on the front. So you can stitch with this part on top, and you'll be able to make sure that your point stays there. I take a pin and put it right there at the point, and then pick it up on this back side. And in this case, I'm going to come down about 1/4 inch and then put that right in the seam line. That way the point will end up right on the seam line. Put your fabric pieces together and line up the top edges or the edges that you need to line up. And make sure your pin is perpendicular, goes straight down into the fabric, like that. If you're at an angle like this, your points won't match. So make sure they're straight, perpendicular to the fabric, and then put it into the fabric. When you start sewing, line up these edges here. Start at your 1/4 inch and sew all the way down, and you're going to aim for this point where that pin goes into the fabric, and you'll know that you're matching the point and the seam line on the back. And straighten your bottom edge again and continue stitching 1/4 inch off. And here's what the stitching looks like if you can barely see it on here with this thread. It goes right across here, leaving the point open. You're not stitching over the point. And then if I flip it over, you'll see it's not exactly 1/4 inch there, but that doesn't matter because what you want is the point to match the seam allowance here. Now just press the seam open and you're finished. So we finished our building blocks. These are the half square triangles, 3 different styles. This is the center unit, the square on point, and these are the flying geese units. We have our extra fill-in pieces here, our rectangles and squares. So this is our center unit, and we're going to put this to the side. So now we look at the second half of the left column, and we're going to stitch the side units. We just have 2 steps for stitching the side units. And just look at the picture and put the patches together. This one we're going to make a 4-patch unit, and I'll take one of these and I'll take a square this next to that, and then 2 of these half square triangles. And we'll just make sure we have the right pieces in the right spot by comparing it to the diagram in step 1 of the side units. So we'll just check them, and then we'll piece 4 like this. Piece these 2 together and these 2 together, press the seams open, and then stitch the 2 rows together. We finished step 1 of the side units, and we've made 4 of these. Step 2 in the side unit, we're going to take the flying geese unit and stitch it to the top like this. Here is the step 1 unit, and we'll sew the flying geese unit at the top like this. Just stitch the seam and press the seams open, and then we'll have the side unit finished. And here is what the side units look like, and we have 4 of them. Let's take a moment and check our progress. Here is our center unit, our square on point. These are our side units. They're going to go on the sides, and it'll make more sense when you see this. And I call them the side unit because they're kind of in the middle, but I don't want to call them middle units. The next thing we'll make will be the corner units, which will go in these 4 corners. So you can see here the slip knot is taking its form. Now let's move on and piece the corner units. Let's look at step 1 of the corner units. We'll take the blue and black half square triangles and the black and white half square triangles. So we'll piece them like this, just following the diagram, and make 4 of these. And while you're at the machine, take the B units. Step 2 is the B units. We're going to sew 4 of them together like this. Stitch them together and press the seams open. Here is step 1. Here is step 2. Now we'll sew these together. Sew the seam and press them open. And while you're at your machine, take the last set of units left, which is this half square triangle and these rectangles. And you'll sew them together like this. Stitch the seam and press them open. Now we've completed step 3 of the corner units and step 4 of the corner units. Step 5, we're going to sew them together like this. Stitch it together, press the seams open, and then you'll have your 4 corner units finished. And here are the completed corner units. Now we'll just take all of the corners, the sides, and the center unit, take our proppet board, and we'll put the block together. Before we sew this block together, I wanted to give you my recommendation for another video I made. It's called Jelly Roll Sizzle, and it's a free download from the Fat Quarter shop. It uses jelly rolls and a little bit of yardage for black fabric. It's really an easy quilt to do, and it's very fast to make, and I call it a mindless quilt. So check it out. There's a link in the description below this video. There's a link right now to take you to the video. So the units into rows. We'll have 3 rows, top, middle, and bottom. Press the seams open and then sew the rows together and your block will be finished. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and while you're at it, click the bell to be notified of future videos.